Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. One of the cars secretly that I've been trying to get hold of for review on the channel for a very long time is a Mark III Cavalier, and here we have a Mark III Cavalier, and it looks really good on the video. It looks far better actually on the video in terms of the colour of the car than it does in real life. It's really quite sort of shining. This is a 1995 Vauxhall Cavalier 1.6 Classic. And you say, what on earth is a Cavalier Classic? And all the information that I've looked at suggests that this car doesn't exist. What I can just really imagine is that this is some kind of run-out model based on the LS. I'm not sure what the Classic gave you other than LS. It may have been slightly different wheel trims. So it was registered in October 1995, right at the end of Mark III Cavalier production. If you're from elsewhere in the world, then you might know this as the Opel Vectra A. We just happen to like the Cavalier name in this country, and these were huge sellers when they were new, absolutely massive sellers. I'm very grateful to Sean, who's a friend of Patrick, whose massive collection of Austin Rover stuff you would have seen on the channel recently, for allowing me to drive this. He's had this car a long time, I think about 8 years. And yeah, he's pretty into his you know, old Vauxhalls like this. So straight away, a very familiar interior to somebody who's, you know, driven anything Vauxhall in the 1990s. Obviously, this is a facelifted car. They came out originally in '88, and this is a '95, so it's right at the end. But things like this enormously, sort of almost comically large airbag equipped steering wheel that I think was shared with the Mark III Astra. These indicator and wiper stalks that turned up everywhere, even though I think the Lotus Elise still had them right until the end of that car being made. Drive around passenger airbags in this late model. The original one didn't come with one. The original Cavalier, sorry, that at you know, launch didn't come with airbags at all. Then we got this manual sunroof, which is great. When it switches, obviously just two, because this is a sort of rather lowly model. And then, ooh, let's do that again. That's quite fancy. Let's do that again. Ooh. And then a cigarette lighter and an ashtray. The top of this ghillie, I think, has been replaced. This car's done 104,000 miles, so I think that's probably been replaced. But the gaiters on these always go a bit funny. It's just the way it goes. And typical slightly loose and long throw Vauxhall gearbox, and it's almost impossible to put it in reverse as well, which is nice. Lots of blanking plates as well, because, you know, you didn't pay extra for you know, to get the CDX, and you know, just one fog light switch and all that sort of stuff. But very comfortable seats, and yes, you could fit a lot of secret mission documents in there. Absolutely, no problem. But the interior is in actually really, really good condition for a car that's, well, over 25 years old now. Let's see what it's like in the back. Again, lots and lots and lots of glass area, a typical kind of design of the late 80s and early 90s. That's my driving position there. I am about 5'11", and I've got, you know, perfectly adequate knee space. You can slide your feet underneath the front seat. The only thing is the headlining is sagging. The rear headroom's a bit more restricted than what I was expecting, and you know, this headlight doesn't help, but for some reason it's not that great. Maybe this saloon would be slightly better, I don't know. No estate version of a Mark III Cavalier, despite there being a Mark II estate. Maybe they didn't think there was enough market for it. Wind-up windows in the back, of course. You could get electric windows in the Cavalier, but not this specification. And well, the classic Vauxhall of this period, headrests with holes in them because you didn't need all the headrest for some reason. I don't quite know why. Right, let's have a look in the enormous boot. This car proudly says that it's got ABS, which is good. The later ones did have. And there we are. Wow, that's a big boot. Two-piece parcel shelf as well. Imagine under here somewhere is a spare tyre, but that's probably quite heavy lift off, so we won't do that. But it's quite shallow. It's not the deepest kind of capacity or anything like that, but got things like a storage compartment for the warning triangle and spare and first aid kit there, which is quite nice. Easy to change the bulb. You just take these plastic covers off. That's pretty good. And a ski hatch as well. That was something that Vauxhall made a big thing of back in the early 90s. Yes, it's pretty good, really. I quite like this view, actually. So here is the 1.6 injection engine, and in this case, because it's got a category converter for Euro 1 emissions regulations, it develops about 75 horsepower. There's a lot of space to work on in here, and you can very clearly see the gearbox just down there. Cam cover gaskets on these do leak, as you can see, but that's really common of a lot of engines of this type. There is a timing belt on these, and yeah, make sure you change the timing belt on your Family 1 engine regularly. It will go far better for you if you do. There is the ABS pump just there. Being a later car, it has one of those. Yeah, they're generally quite good engines to work on, but this one I think has had a new head on it actually. I think it's got a 1.8 head on it, so maybe the BHP is slightly different on this, I don't know. But yeah, certainly you can have up to 2.5 litres of V6 engine creamy goodness in your Cavalier Mark III, if that's what you want, and maybe that's the one that I would prefer to go for. Right, let's take her out for a drive. Right, so here we are in Holywell in North Wales, and we're going up an extremely steep hill, and well, it's coping. I mean, the car's only got 75 horsepower, so you can't really expect it to have racing car performance. I mean, if you wanted racing car performance, you could buy that GSI 2000 or something like that, you know, or the V6. You know, that would probably do you well too, but you know, for just poodling around, this is absolutely fine. The steering is quite vague. It shares that trait with the Vectra B and also with the Saab 9.3 we had on no budget quite recently. It was a similar colour to this. Not surprising, because all three cars are really quite similar underneath. But somehow I just prefer this to the Vectra. I don't know what it is, but I do prefer it. It's not just the look of the car, it's just something about the way that it feels. Maybe because it feels a little bit older, you can sort of forgive some of the rather disappointing dynamic flaws in this as opposed to the Vectra, because this is an older car. Oh, I think we'll stop there rather than crashing into a Ford Transit. I think that's better. We didn't have to show off the ABS though, but I do have to use some clutch control here and get round. Thank you very much. Right. Oh, no rev counter in this, of course, absolutely none, and the gearing is for economy, so yes, you do have to thrash it sometimes in order to get where you're going. Normally at this point I would tell you about all the engine and trim options, but because there are so many in a Mark III Cavalier, particularly for a car that really wasn't on sale for that long. I mean, it's only about 7 or 8 years it was on sale. There's quite a lot, and the power output's varied as well with the engine, sometimes like 4 times. So I won't tell you about those. Instead, I'll tell you about the ride, which is pretty good. I mean, this car's done 104,000 miles, and it actually feels pretty good. I'm quite impressed. Although there is one thing I will say. There was the good old 1.7 Isuzu Circle L forbidden fuel engine available in the Mark III Cavalier, but as usual, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. Here we are, viewers, experiencing some blinding acceleration in this 1.6 Cavalier. One thing about this, the seat is actually really comfortable. It's better than a Vectra B, I think. And the sort of people who used to buy these, a lot of them did have a jacket they'd hang up on the coat hook there and bottom her down the motorways, and it sure tells me that it is very comfortable doing motorway journeys. He did use this on a daily basis for a couple of years after he bought it, and I can see how he would have been able to do that. The steering wheel is really big though. It's like comically big, which sort of gets in the way when you're sort of doing your BSM shuffle, which is what people keep calling my steering when we see it, which is very handy when you're driving cars without power steering, but of course this one has it, and it's reasonably light. There's not a lot of feel through the steering, but then I'm not sure in a car like this you particularly need that. Long throw on the gearbox. Brakes are pretty good. We know we've got the reassurance of the ABS if anything happens. And just using these little stalks, it just makes me smile. It's just a type of car that was everywhere for a long time, and you just don't see these anymore, particularly in this sort of condition, which is absolutely great. Right, I better go and give this back, I suppose. So, viewers, let's have a look at some Mark III Cavalier engine options and trim levels. There's just no way I can remember all this sort of on this chart I've got here. It's too complicated for me when I'm trying to drive and not crash. So yes, the basic engine before the facelift was a 75 brake horsepower 1.4 with a carb. There was also a 1.6 with a carb, generating 82 horsepower. A lot of the reasons why they put fuel injection on the car was because of emissions regulations for Euro 1, which came in January 1993. So the facelift came in late '92, so that was probably about the right sort of time to be looking at those things. 1.6 injection pre-cat was 70 horsepower, and then with this catalyzed version, it's 75 horsepower. 1.8 and 1.8 injection and car and cat, they're all the same at 90 horsepower. The 2-litre 8-valve engine, the famous red top, that came in 115, 130 brake horsepower versions. Sorry, no, red tops were 16 valve, I do apologise. 2 litre, 150, 130 brake horsepower versions. The 130 was out of the old Mark II Cavalier SRI 130, that was a sort of limited edition very near the end of Mark II production, of course. The 2 litre 16 valve that was used in a lot of other Vauxhall models as well, that was 150 horsepower, but then from mid 1994 onwards, I think, due to emissions regulations, that was changed to the Ecotec version, but was 136 horsepower. There were also two very exciting engine options that with the 2 litre turbo with 201 horsepower, or my favourite, the 2.5 V6 that came in the facelift models with 170 horsepower. Up until the 92 facelift, the trims were base, so like Cavalier 1.4, 1.6, then L, GL, CD, Diplomat, 4x4, there was a 4x4 version of the Cavalier available, also with the turbo engine, SRI, GSI, yes, but also you get the with 4x4, and Concept. After the 92 facelift, trim levels were Envoy, that was the base model, LS, Colorado Special Edition, GLS, V6, just V6 on its own for some reason, CD, CDX, Diplomat, SRI, Cesaro, that also came with a V6 engine for some reason, turbo. I think the turbo was only available post facelift. The ethos, the expression, and the concept. That's a lot of trim levels and engine options. So, viewers, the Mark III Cavalier, especially this unknown classic variant of it, is this a car that you should consider with your hard-earned budget of under £1,000? Well, I don't see why not. It's very spacious. It's actually reasonably easy to drive. The gearbox is a bit of a nightmare, but you know, never mind. If you can find one that's not rusted away, and if the engine's in reasonable condition, hasn't blown the head gasket or anything, because it's had lots of good maintenance and the timing belt's been changed on the Family 1 variants, then yes, it could make an interesting classic alternative to a modern car. Just because of the sort of space and the fact that you can get cars with things like ABS and twin airbags in them, like this one. I would be quite cautious about buying a really cheap one of these. It's probably not worth doing that. Just spend a little bit more and get a nicer one like this. But yes, I'm finally absolutely and utterly privileged to have driven all three versions of the Opel Vectra, A, B and C, and of course the famous Vauxhall Cavalier. Hopefully I can get my hands on some other Cavaliers. 20-year legacy this car left, and we're still feeling it today. This is a nostalgic thing for so many people. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed to Sean for supplying this car, and thank you ever so much indeed for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be informed of new uploads. I'll put a link to the 2 Vectra reviews that I've done in the description below. Yes, switch on notifications to be informed of new episodes of this and other stuff on the channel. Social media links are down in the description below. And thank you ever so much indeed once again.